Hello. Wow, wow, wow. We're back. I took a break here. So sorry about that. So many things were going on. I did some Sapien episodes with Chris, but now Peak Human is back. We're back to the old format with the doctors, the scientists, the regenerative ag people, the big thinkers. So excited. I have some updates. We were working on another company this whole time called Brights. That's about to launch on March 12th. So you can check that out, brightsbeauty.com. This is pure nutrients and protein, and it's a big thing we've been working on. Dr. Jamie Seaman is our chief medical officer. You'll hear from her in the next episode. I've been working on publishing my 3 papers, been working on the Sapien Center, been working about a conference now with the Lifespan Summit with Aneil, who you'll hear from today. That's going to be big, lifespansummit.org. Check that out. Been working on so many things, nose to tail as well. We got our oyster pills. We're just improving our website. Too many updates. I'll spare you all the details. Just know there's a lot of big things coming. Food lies as well. Still looking for a celebrity to get involved. Still working on it. Got our production company. But just know Peak Human is back. Episodes will come more regularly. And this one is a fantastic one with Aneil. He's a PhD. He's doing some big things. He does a sort of a long intro in the beginning of this podcast for his credentials. So I'll leave that for him to say. And if you really need to, you can skip ahead because there's so much good content in the last 60% of this episode about the lifespan model. This is the alternative to Sickcare. This is huge. This is the future of healthcare. All of these episodes I've done, hundreds of episodes of Peak Human, so many times it comes back to the Sickcare system is broken. What do we do to fix it? They're too big. There's too many misaligned incentives. And so far, the only solution I've had is to take care of your own health, eat real food, live the Sapien lifestyle. But Aneil has come up with an actual solution that we can implement alongside the Sickcare system, and it's called the lifespan model. And he's been pitching it around to some of the biggest players in America. We're talking about the MAHA team, maybe people at the NIH, big doctors you may have heard of. A lot of people are on board with this and interested in doing this. And it puts the incentives where they should be, where people get incentivized to keep people healthy and live longer, right? And people will actually make money doing this. So these companies, there can be these new companies or agencies, sort of like a life insurance company that can make money by keeping people healthy. It's groundbreaking. We're going to do a whole conference about it, probably November 14th in Austin, lifespansummit.org. You can check that out. And just listen to this episode. I'm telling you, it's so cool how he's aligned the incentives and made a way for us to actually deliver good health. And I'm really excited about this episode. And Aneil is great. He's got an investment fund. He's done so many big things with Harvard, in Silicon Valley, investing in companies, investing in digital health, wearables. His partner, Linnea Avey, was actually the co-founder of 23andMe. I think she got out before they started selling people's data. She moved to Austin and got out of that Silicon Valley world. She's also involved in this. She's very awesome, very smart, and doing great things. And they're using their money and influence to make people healthy, especially with this lifespan system. This is a really interesting episode that no one's ever heard before. This is like no other podcast that's ever been created. Really got to listen to this one. Support my little businesses, nosetotale.org. Get your skin food, beef tallow, body care products, hair food. Hair hold is what I use in my hair. Get your oyster pills, get Brights. It's a beauty formulation. This is a new company, brightsbeauty.com. It's launching March 12th. It's a packet of nutrients and protein. And that's about it. You can check me out at food.lies on Instagram, of course. Look out for Food Lies series. We're still chugging away on that. And enjoy this one with my friend Aneil. All right, Aneil, we're live. Peak Human is back. I took a little break, and now I'm back with my friend Aneil Malavarapu. He's a great guy in Austin doing some big things. He's got a PhD in
biochemistry and cell biology.
And I just found out yesterday his award-winning work led to the creation of the virtual cell program at Harvard's System Biology Department. systems biology department. Yes, so he's been doing things in the health adjacent world and health worlds for many years, is now an investor in some health startups, and I'm going to let him kind of tee us up a little bit before we get to the meat of the conversation.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. I started as a scientist. I was supposed to be a doctor, but much to the chagrin of my parents, I went down the science route. And there's some funny stories about that because, growing up as a good Indian boy, you're expected to do medicine. And all my parents, my family, uncles and aunties, their friends, they were all doctors. And so, they would come up at parties to me and say, "So, Aneil, what will you be specializing in?" I was 11 years old. And so that was how I grew up, with this expectation I'd be a doctor. But I vectored off at the last moment and got interested in science. And there was a prof at Harvard in the biology department, and I started doing my honors thesis there. And that just tipped me over into thinking about technology, actually, in science. And then I started my PhD at UCSF, and lab moved to Harvard, and I finished up there at the Harvard Systems Biology Department at the medical school. And I did some drug discovery work for a time in a genomics-based drug discovery company called Millennium Pharmaceuticals. That was like the third biggest genome sequencing operation in the world during the human genome era. And so I wanted robots to do that instead of sitting at a bench and doing it. And that's what Millennium was doing. They were doing high throughput biology. One of the earliest outfits to do that. And I thought, God, that's the future of where we need to go with science. And I developed a lot of technology there. And they did a lot of big deals, biggest deals, I think, at the time, between biotech and pharma. And then I started thinking about systems, because we knew the genome and we knew all the components, the genes, so to speak. We're just at the beginning of our discovery of that. But the question was, how does it all work together? And it's a complex system. And so at Harvard, they were starting the systems biology department. And people were starting to write mathematical models of biological systems, of like writing what are called ordinary differential equations models. And I thought, oh, okay, biology is going to turn into physics now. And so we need a way of managing all that complexity in biology. And I did this very stupid thing of saying, hey, we should have a programming language that allows us to combine formal statements about biology and be able to interoperate all of these statements that are being made in these papers in a formal mathematical way. And that gave rise to this thing called the Little B project at the Systems Biology Department, and that gave rise to the virtual cell program there. And so I've been doing very geeky things across like biochemistry and cell biology and optics. Then I got into Silicon Valley, kind of fell off the wagon, started building companies in Silicon Valley. And then I met Linnea, who started 23andMe, and she kind of pulled me back from the dark side. And we started working on digital health ideas. And we were at Rock Health, which was kind of the luminary sort of Silicon Valley incubator for digital health. And there were other digital health incubators, but that incubator really said, we need to have a Silicon Valley style approach to health. And it was taking these ideas from the direct-to-consumer world and saying, we need to have good design and good user experience. And there was a kind of new style of how we were going to do health through Rock Health. And Linnea was the first, she was on the founding board of Rock Health. So we spent a lot of time with digital health companies, and those were direct-to-consumer companies, as well as companies that were working directly with what I call the vendors, which is the healthcare system. And so we saw a lot of stuff through that. And I got very frustrated with the existing healthcare system through that. Saw all the warts.
Yeah, so that's good that Aneil's here to talk about the lifespan model, which is, I call it the alternative to Sickcare, or it's a system that can go along with the Sickcare model. because you can't just replace it overnight. So it sounds like you have a great background, like really thinking about this stuff, hard technology, digital health, all these different like fields that helped prepare you to come up with this lifespan model. And so I love the systems thinking part. You triggered me a little bit with the differential equations. I came from a mechanical engineering background, and I'm just trying to remember those differential equations, and it just hurt your head.
Oh yeah.
And so, yeah, but the systems thinking is something, and the technical background is something that I feel like I bring to the table because I don't have an MD, PhD. I'm not in the nutrition world, yet I talk about the food stuff. And I think it's from the systems thinking, which you have deep experience with. And that brings you to come up with this amazing model called the lifespan model. And what's the website, just if people want to check it out?
It's lifespanproject.us.
Okay, check that out. That's cool. So you can learn more about it after you hear about it. And I'll just give a little more background is Aneil came to what we call the legislative roundtable. And I'm not political, you're not political, but we were trying to get this in front of politicians. And so there were some politicians there and they were very interested. You had the floor. People were, before you came in, it was just nonstop, people talking over each other for 2 hours. You came in and everyone was silent. And you pitched this lifespan model that's like, oh, wow, there's an alternative to the Sickcare system, and we can actually do this. So,
Like I was talking too much. I felt really shy. I thought, oh, I better shut up here.
no,
I
it was such a
realize
good
the
thing.
background.
No, it was such a good thing. People were actually interested in what you had to say. We had another event at Sapien Center where you had some great people in the crowd, just like really high achieving people that, again, were very interested in this. So the main goal is to get in front of the right people, and this is sort of your first public forum to talk about it. And I want to just get it out into the world because I think it's so important. I've done this podcast for about 7 years now, and we always talk about the Sickcare system, and the incentives are misaligned, but we never have a solution. No one's ever come up with anything. We just kind of complain about it, and then the best solution is, all right, people, take health into your own hands, eat real food, exercise, sleep, all the simple things. But that's not good enough, right? That's what we all should do anyway, but we need a better model. So I'll let you jump back in. You've worked with digital health companies. You've seen what's wrong with the Sickcare system. You've probably hit your head against the wall a few times. Keep going.
I was also building companies in Silicon Valley, and around the time that I met Linnea, I had just been working in an ad company. I hate ads. I needed to do something, and I got involved with this influencer marketing company and built an influencer marketplace. And the reason this is relevant is I started thinking about marketplaces and incentives pretty carefully. And one of my friends, an advisor, studied with this guy at Harvard, I can't remember his name, who came up with all of the theory behind two-sided marketplaces. So I learned a lot about just thinking about incentive structures, and we designed this model that was, I hate ads. So I always turn off ads.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, can we have ads people like? Because I hate them. And so we came up with a model to incentivize the right behaviors amongst influencers to make ads that people literally liked. And so those became the top hashtags and videos on Vine and Instagram early in the day before they shut down our API access. But, so I started thinking really about like not biological systems, but sort of incentive system design around that time. And that's been kind of a constant because of what I learned from my friend Roland Pan, who's at Harvard Business School. And he was like chief strategy officer at Skype, and he was at eBay. And so I took a lot of the learning of thinking about two-sided marketplaces and incentives and how do you arrange those things to get kind of the right outcome. And so that's a big part of what has gone into lifespan as well.
It's the most important part. It's human nature. It's like you do something you're incentivized to do, right? It's never going to work if you aren't incentivized to do something. I don't do things I'm not incentivized to do. Why would I do that, right? So I get it. Like you need to consider these things.
Yeah, that's the problem with the healthcare system. It's like there are lots of really good people in the healthcare system, but they're frustrated, they're stressed out. I've talked to doctors who say there's a feeling of fear. And where is that coming from? Like, you go and talk to people and they all want to do the right thing, but how do you get paid? And the existing system is fundamentally flawed at the most basic level because you get paid for treating sick people. So you want, in that sense, the incentive is you want people to be sick so you have a business. And
Whether you like it or not, that's kind of the incentive.
that is the incentive. And yes, there is preventive care, there is primary care, but you talk to healthcare providers and they're losing money on their primary care practices and they're forced by regulation to do preventive care. So the things that healthcare should be, which is keeping you healthy, are not really part of the incentive structure. And that goes very, very deep. Like, you also have billing codes. So you're paid by doing things and selling services, not for the outcome. And so that creates another kind of malincentive where doctors, I talk about everybody in the healthcare system as vendors, and we should really look at them as that. And the digital health industry is largely focused around serving the vendors in that market, unlike other areas of where Silicon Valley went into taxis, right? And you can imagine that. What if Travis Kalanick said, "Hey, I'm going to build dispatching software for the taxi cab industry"? Where would we be? And to disrupt an industry, you actually want to serve the customer, and it's very, very hard to do that. And that's what we found out in Rock Health. You really have to think about, well, where's my billing code, and who controls the billing codes? Well, that's the AMA, which is essentially like a labor union. They represent the doctors, and that takes like 2 years, maybe $500,000 to $2 million to get a new billing code. And then the incentives there are not aligned. And those billing codes are accepted by the government. And then those are used by the insurance companies to determine who gets paid. And then that entire system is kind of our default system that employers adopt. They go to those Sickcare insurers. And so we're locked in all of these different ways into these insurance pools that will last typically about the time of employment, which is 3.5 years on average. And so that creates another malincentive where you've got, if you're paying for something that's going to reduce the costs in 5 years or 10 years, well, why would you do that? There's not people may do that, and some doctors may look ahead and actually do that, but the incentive isn't there. So that's not optimized. And some of those things are just going to be dissuaded, right? Because it's a cost on the pool now that's not going to benefit the pool.
Yeah, I would stop there for a second just to make sure people understand that part. The employer wants to have low-cost healthcare for their employees, but you said that I didn't know before I started talking to you is that the average employment is only 3.5 years. So normal employees, the vast majority of employers, have no incentive to keep people healthy for long periods. But maybe someone like Amazon or these big companies, they start doing more private internal healthcare problems. So then they are finally being incentivized to keep people healthy. But that's not the majority. Is that correct?
I would think so, but then, their employees are going to turn over too. So strictly speaking,
no one really has incentive.
Nobody really has that incentive because it's short term and health is long term. And so that's another fundamental problem. And then doctors, because they want to write billing codes into their EMRs, which are really came from billing systems where you justify what you're doing. So you want to prove, hey, look, I did something that's allowed under regulation. And so they want to optimize for doing as many billing codes as possible. That's how they make money. Well, that also means that, why would I spend my time researching the latest and greatest thing? Well, you wouldn't, because that would take time out of issuing billing codes. And so doctors are 9 to 17 years, depending on which study, 14 years approximately, out of date with the clinical literature. So there's another malincentive. And then on top of everything else, doctors typically, what happens is, I had chronic illness for some time, and you'll go from doctor to doctor, and then the doctor doesn't really serve your needs, and then you just go find another doctor and say they don't even know that they've failed, and they wouldn't have much of an incentive for changing things because they've got their services that they offer, and they just want to keep selling those things. So it's all these weird things in the system where it creates frustration. I have to go into the doctor's office. Why? Because that's what the billing code requires.
Hmm.
And so I may not need to, but there's no efficiency in doing the other thing. Telehealth is fixing that somewhat, but I still need to see a doctor. Why? You know, we know now, like there's a study, I think this was, folks at Stanford were talking about this in medical school, where there's a famous study where AI was doing diagnosis at 95% accuracy and doctors were at 73%. And so then they gave AIs to doctors, and then that improved their score to 75%. And so even there, we're seeing this better performance with AIs, but we've got this culture that says, talk to your doctor. And well, those kind of slogans I view as marketing campaigns for keeping current system in place. And so, this is where you come from when you're in the digital health world and you really think about disruption. And there's this meme that's a little bit famous amongst digital health people, which is the technologist's journey through healthcare or digital health. And then there's this peak of optimism of, hey, we're going to change everything. And then there's this trough of sorrow. And then it kind of increases slightly towards the end of saying, oh, I guess we'll make this one little process 5% better. And then this meme was actually in a blog post that was saying, hey, this is the solution and this is an optimistic version.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we're a services business now, which is to say, we're just going to provide some other form of care that's 5% better. And so those like huge disruptions that we saw in Silicon Valley across media, payments, mobility, all of these things, they're not happening in healthcare. And I remember Linnea saying a few years ago, I wonder whether digital health has brought down any costs. Mm. And the answer would have to be, the financial logic is, how could it? Like, how could you say to your customers, the vendors, hey, we've got a product where you'll make less money? So that there are all of these like very, very deep structural problems where people are sort of tinkering around with another insurance model or another, just various different things in the space or new technology. That's what I thought would fix things. Like, we'll automate things, we'll get all these efficiencies. And then you realize, even though you have these conversations with people where they're excited, they'll say, we don't know how to pay for this. Yeah. Because the budget, you'll find all kinds of things where it actually doesn't make sense because of the way people are getting paid. So that's where, years of looking at that and then complaining at cocktail parties about the healthcare system is what really gave rise to Lifespan. I was saying, oh my God, every which way you go, you're blocked. And I remember this one very successful entrepreneur, and he was, head of this machine learning group he had 300 people in machine learning at Google under him, and he went into digital health. And I remember this very common thing that you'd see this, I talk about this 1,000-yard stare from people who'd been technologists who'd gone into digital health. And he had that look, and he said, I've worked in many industries, and this is by far the worst industry I've ever worked in. And it was very successful. He raised a lot of money. And that was kind of the feeling of like, how do we fix it? All we can do is be opportunists in making some money in this system while it keeps growing as a part of the economy and our health metrics keep going down. So what's going on? It's not a normal business sector.
Yeah. We have some statistics in the Food Lies series that some of the top 3 industries in the U.S. are Sickcare. They're in the trillions of dollars. So it's this giant tanker ship that's just going forward. And I feel like all the people with great intentions like yourself and other digital health companies, they're just, the classic rearranging the deck chairs in the Titanic. They're just up there on this big ship, but maybe they make a little improvement and like, oh, well, we made a little aerodynamic adjustment to this giant ship, but it doesn't change the fact that this ship is still going in the same direction, right? It's so big, there's so much money, it's not going to change. So you're talking about building a new ship, basically.
Yeah, little sailboat. that will
It can
grow
start
bigger
as a
and
little
bigger.
sailboat, yes, and then it
Yeah.
grows. So yeah, he's not delusional. Aneil's a smart man. He doesn't think that all of a sudden we're just going to replace the Sickcare system. That's absolutely impossible.
Totally impossible.
But you can build your little sailboat that will eventually, hopefully, be maybe now instead of this huge tanker, one day we have two medium-sized ships that can go next to each other, right? They can hopefully we just steal some people and money and everything away from the big system.
Yeah, I think a lot of people want this. People inside the system, inside the blues, they talk about this actively, and they also want a solution to this. They know that there are things that are going wrong, and as we go forward, it's not supportable. So we've got a major crisis, not just in the economics of the healthcare system, but we've got a health crisis that's brewing as well. And that, that's something that Maha's tackling in brilliant ways, like relatively simple moves at the executive level. But then there's also this underlying thing of what are the incentives here, and that's where the lifespan really came out of I give this rant at a cocktail party, and I'd say, hey, what if here's this crazy idea, what do you think? And I was just hoping that somebody would tell me, boy, you're really stupid. There's no way that can work. So that's been tried before and it fails for all of these obvious reasons. And then I could just not talk about that anymore and I wouldn't have to think about it. And that was like, honestly, the way I was proceeding. I was just looking for somebody to tell me, oh, this is super bad. And, over time, I started meeting serious people who actually had backgrounds in health policy and health economics. There were a couple of Aspen Institute fellows who I chatted with about it, and I got this kind of sideways head cock and saying, oh, that's actually kind of interesting. And that gave me more confidence to talk about it with more people. And at some point, we ended up, it was just this summer, there was a gathering by this woman, Elizabeth Horn, who runs an autism foundation. And she supported RFK Jr. and brought together a group of people, it was like 12, 15 people, just to talk about new ideas for healthcare. And people were talking about, well, we need resilience scores, we need to do microbiome testing, and we need to do all of these different kinds of tests, and here's the technology, and we need to use AI. And my, at that point, very jaded perspective was, we need to think about the incentives. And so then I did my pitch on lifespan, and that's where I saw there was interest in it, and there was a serious signal of interest. And then I wrote the paper, and then that paper started getting around, and there was more interest in lifespan out of that. And then we spoke, and there was the talk at Sapiens Center, which was great. And so since then, things have really been building, and there's been a lot of interest in it.
Yeah, so you wrote a white paper. You have sort of a coalition behind you. Is that the same 12 people?
No, it's new people, and it's very early days for this. We've got some advisors that we're really proud of. We've got John Mackey, founder of Whole Foods, Jason Karp, who's sort of behind the scenes, but also in front of the scenes person in the Maha movement.
He was part of the Senate hearing with the Fruit Loops. People remember him. He was at the event with Bobby, and Callie Means and all those people last week in Austin.
Yeah, Jason's a true superhero. I know him as a friend, and he's so passionately committed to healthy foods. He runs True Food Kitchen and Hugo, which does Hue chocolate, and he's so committed to healthy ingredients. And so we're super proud to have him there as the person who brought this issue of red and yellow food dyes to national attention. And then Julia Cheek, who is a CEO of Everlywell, which is a major direct-to-consumer testing service. are our current advisors. And as I said, this is all just getting underway.
Hmm.
And I just spoke with Peter Wang, who's really interested and may join as an advisor to us. He was the guy who started Anaconda, the Python AI, ML, big data
Hmm.
software, open source software platform. And he's actually right around the corner. I just saw
Mm.
Anaconda's offices are right
Yeah,
around the
yeah.
corner from us. So we're starting to build those kind of a group of people like that. I've been talking with digital health companies, and there are so many digital health companies that are doing a very similar thing. They're kind of like, hey, well, it's kind of like Function Health, but we're going to have this kind of these kind of measures, and we do something else. And there are companies like Levels and
Mhm.
Inside Tracker. Thorne Biosciences has applications like this, and then there's scads of companies who are coming up with different renditions of this thing where they're going to do all kinds of usually direct to consumer testing and then deliver health insights. And that's actually a critical component of how lifespan is envisioned, is this cadre of companies. And what it answers is, how do you get paid and how do you align the incentives so they're doing the right thing?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like we've teased it long enough. I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of the listener. And they're like, just tell us what's the lifespan model. So let's very simply at first tell them what is the lifespan model and we'll grow on that from there.
Yeah. Lifespan is a financial model that incentivizes the players to produce long and healthy lives, which is a strange thing. How do you make a system where the goal is providing long and healthy lives? That are you creating regulations for people? And no, the answer is no. It's just the way the payments are arranged. And so it's inspired by life insurance, which in principle wants the customer to be alive for as long as possible so that they are paying premiums for as long as possible. So you can imagine something like a life insurance account, maybe managed by life insurance companies, where premiums go in, but it also acts as something like an HSA, and maybe it is an HSA. Now,
Explain the HSA for people who don't have one or know.
that's a health savings account, and those are typically bundled together with high deductible insurance plans. And there are some moves, like Rand Paul is arguing for increasing the HSA limit to 25,000 from, I don't know, like a few thousand. And so there are moves to put the spending more in the hands of the consumers themselves so that they can drive their spending. And so if you think about that model, that's another thing I think that's really important in terms of the problems with the current system is that, with employer-based insurance, you're not selecting your health insurance. So you have this, what economists call the principal agent problem, where your HR, a representative, not representative, but an HR employee is deciding for everyone collectively based on not exactly their needs, but something that the company wants. And so that destroys market selection, where consumers say, hey, I like this product and I'm going to get it. And so that's another component of lifespan that I'll get to. But so you have an insurance, this lifelong account, like life insurance that may pay out at the end. And in principle, what you want to do, if that is paying for preventable disease costs, the incentive is to prevent those preventable diseases. Why? Because prevention is much cheaper than dealing with a preventable disease. So we have this, epidemic of chronic disease in our country, and we're spending on sick care, and Sickcare loves it all day long because then they get to, sell drugs and do services, and you
Hmm.
have doctor's visits. And that's not what healthcare should be at all. It should be keeping you healthy. We don't have any incentive for that. And so what lifespan does, just this part of the structure itself is the core idea behind this model, is you want to prevent disease, not treat disease. That's the entire goal of how this financial structure works. Now, you don't want to have a relationship for your entire life with one company that you can't change, because then you lose selection. You lose consumer selection. You're just, you know, they know that they have you for life, and they have much lower incentives for improving their service. So another really important component of lifespan is separating this other role, which we call a lifespan agent. So lifespan agent is, you can think of it as a true health fiduciary. They get paid with some premiums, and you can imagine them as purely digital health big data services. They can have human beings operating in them as well, but the critical thing is how they get paid. So they earn shares in the outcome of that account. So they have a financial interest in that account balance. So what they're going to do is then optimize for prevention. They have every interest in making sure you're doing the right thing. And unlike, say, when you go to a doctor who has services to sell you, hey, you should really get this surgery, the lifespan agent is really thinking about it differently. For example,
How do I prevent the surgery in the first place?
how do I prevent the surgery? And then there's also this other question. Somebody was just telling me about some shoulder surgery that a doctor was recommending to them, and then he did more research on it, and spoke to some friends in health, and they said, well, actually, yes, that will solve that for that short time, but like in 5 or 10 years, you're going to have all of these problems. That's never communicated by the service provider who wants to do the surgery. And lifespan would, over time, like it's not really about Sickcare as it gets out into market, and I'll talk about that. But lifespan would have every interest in knowing exactly that. And that's what people should be advised by.
Sometimes you don't even need the surgery.
Exactly.
That's a big one. Is I feel like I've been pushed into procedures I didn't need before.
That's right, because people are making money. And so what you should have is somebody who's making money by keeping you alive for a long and healthy life. And that's the whole idea behind the model. And you can just imagine these lifespan agent companies are doing things like ordering microbiome tests, ordering your blood tests, keep monitoring you. And then also, because they're earning shares in that account and they're not permanently attached to it, you might switch your provider. So they have every incentive for providing good service to their consumers. But they also have an incentive in the long-term outcome of the consumer. And so that it's that kind of dual thing where you can, have limited service, but also have long-term alignment. That's really what the lifespan model is all about.
Some of this might be easier to see visually, and I know you had some slides that we looked at in the presentation, and maybe you could add those to the website. But yeah, break it down a little better for people to understand that these people, you're not trapped in the system, and you can move, but then they still retain some sort of like equity or and is it individuals or like pools of people?
Well, that I think will be handled by the insurance back end of how they deal with that, with the pools of money. And that's what life insurance companies are good at. They have an individual account and a guarantee in the case of life insurance that there will be a payout. But what they're doing is they're managing that risk as a pool. And so that's what insurance companies are good at. And there are insurance companies that could do this right now. The addition would be this share model. So that's kind of the new element. And that's what we're exploring in policy work with some people at UT. So, those are the things that we're working out right now, like exactly how do those flows work, and then what kind of revenue and value do these kinds of companies generate? What are all the dials and knobs that make this thing work and look incredibly attractive? Because these are not just do-gooder businesses. These need to be things that are like economically incredibly exciting, which I think that they are, because the other part of this ecosystem are venture capitalists who will be investing in this new category of company. So that's kind of how this thing looks like. It's very, very market driven, but the market is oriented towards doing the right thing. So you get super high innovation over time for all of these technologies, which take a long time to get into the doctor's clinic, if they do at all. Like, I remember early on at 23andMe, Linnea went to her doctor at Palo Alto Medical Center, Stanford Medical Center, and she asked, can you do anything with my genetic data, with my 23andMe data? And they just looked at her like she was crazy. Mm-hmm. And that's still actually true. There's not much that they do with any of this data that comes from all these direct-to-consumer devices. And we know, or tests, they just won't look at it. It's not part of the practice. They may also just order more tests. Like, very often you'll go to a doctor, you've had some tests done, they'll say, well, I don't know where those tests are, and they'll just order more. Well, that's also, kind of another problem that happens because nobody cares about the costs. In Lifespan, that agent, there's also a data story behind this. Lifespan agent controls what services get paid for. They're paying for prevention. The data stays with the consumer in their insurance account. So the agreement then is the Lifespan agent pays for a service, might pay for the ordering, might pay for Quest blood tests, and the agreement is, okay, we pay for your service, you deposit the data in the consumer's account. And the Lifespan agent cares about that because they're running the actuarial tables on that data. So they want it, the consumer keeps it for life, and then the next Lifespan agent doesn't order the data again because they want to keep doing things efficiently. And so it's, Lifespan is like solving all of these problems all at once with this new model.
Yeah, there's so many problems with the data part where, I have no idea where any of my data is. And this actually follows you because they're incentivized for it to follow you. But could you just please try to explain the pools and the agent a little more and how that's passed along? I think it's a little confusing if you're not looking at a visual of the different entities. There's a Lifespan agent, and then how does that work?
Yeah,
they change.
Yeah, it might be worth you just thinking about it practically of like, how would you encounter this thing in the market? So one thing is maybe you go looking for a Lifespan insurer, and you'd say, oh, okay, say John Hancock or Liberty has a Lifespan insurance product, and they would set you up with your account and say, okay, you pay these premiums every month, and this is where your data will go, and you have a login, and you've got all of that. And hey, we have this selection of Lifespan agent companies that you can select from. They're completely separate. And you just choose the one that's right for you. You're an athlete, you might choose a Lifespan, sports optimization agent. Women might choose a Lifespan agent focused on women's health, men for men's health. And that company specializes in that specific demographic and optimizes for them. So that you can imagine maybe people are interested in Chinese medicine, and there's a Lifespan agent that really focuses on that. And then what the agent does, so now you've basically got a relationship with an app or, a service, however they want to deliver it. We don't care. And then that agent is saying, okay, my goal is I want this person to live a long and healthy life. There are services out in the marketplace. There's Oura Ring, there's, blood tests, there are all kinds of things. There are microbiome tests and protein analysis tests. There are sleep aids. There are all kinds of things out there in the marketplace.
New ones could even pop up that we don't even know about, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And Lifespan will stimulate new kinds of companies that can demonstrably prove that they produce better health metrics that lead to long and healthy life. So instead of those companies marketing direct to consumer and keeping the data themselves, like a lot of these digital health companies are actually in a way worse than the existing healthcare industry because they don't even have APIs.
Siloed,
It's even worse. Like, it's beautiful data, but it's even more siloed, and there's no HIPAA requirement over it. So that's the Health Information Portability Act. And so, we were investing in this space. We were investing in AI therapeutics, like AI life sciences, deep tech nerd stuff, and then also digital wearables and digital health companies, with this idea, oh, at some point, the system will get fixed, and these good kinds of companies are going to be part of this new ecosystem. But we felt this empty feeling of like, we're just opportunistically investing in these great companies, but what's the real solution? And that's why we felt like we needed to work on lifespan, because we needed to really change the healthcare system for the better. And so we see these kinds of things playing into that new model, and that new model is going to create new opportunities for companies. And it's not just digital health. I keep saying that because I'm from that world.
Yeah.
But food is healthcare. Food is medicine. But doctors don't even take classes in diet, and there's no billing code for it.
Yeah.
So nobody does that. But that's actually the right thing to do. So this is a system that then starts saying, wait, what are you eating? How can we help you with that? And I see lifespan as really like an economic engine that's beyond healthcare, because then we start caring about things like, are you eating glyphosate? How can we help that? Is there a certification system for restaurants which enables us to use some of your HSA so that you're eating properly? And gyms, all of these other things that actually contribute to your long and healthy life are important and should be part of our default healthcare spend. They should be incentivized. So lifespan becomes like an engine to stimulate everybody. Like over time, these agents will be looking for these opportunities, stimulating the market to do better and better services.
When you first pitched it to me, I got excited because it kind of proves out things that I've always wanted proven. People in my world are sapient. I call it the sapient world. It's just more natural living, right? Let's go back to our human roots, align with nature. We could actually prove out that eating whole foods are better instead of relying on some, one study that's funded by who knows who, right? No one even wants to fund these studies because it goes against the interests of processed food companies.
That's right. But where's the patent, right? How do you fund that?
There's no money in real foods. So we could prove out that this group, or we could look at all this big data and be like, well, these people are eating this and these people are eating this and they're healthier, they're having longer lives. Or even wearables, it's like, okay, Oura Ring. People who use this and we know about them, we can prove that this is a good technology that helps people, or maybe it's not. I have no idea, right? But we can actually prove it with this system because we're incentivized to do so. If I don't want to pick an Oura Ring because I think they're great, but if somehow it's not working, we would know. But it probably would show that people who wear it and are cognizant of their health, their sleep, do better. And then we're like, okay, this does work. Let's do more of this. And if something doesn't work, let's do less of it. This system helps the cream rise to the top.
That's right. And, we actually talked with the CEO of Oura, who's great. And he really loved this notion of the health fiduciary, which is what the lifespan agent is. It's truly aligned with you and your interests in your long-term health. And one thing that he noted is the number one outcome from people having the Oura Ring is that they stop drinking, which is what happened with us too.
You see how bad, even like one glass of wine, you'll sleep terribly.
Yeah, one G&T, we'd have it one G&T, every so often. It was not at all. It was like maybe once every 2 weeks. And I would see that my heart rate was high and my HRV was low until about 1 a.m. And then I woke up the next morning. I was feeling kind of like crap, and my Oura score was low. And then I started to realize, wait a minute, what happened? And it was just that one drink. We're like, why do we need to do this? And that is actually an outcome. So imagine, like, once you start measuring all of these other things and the insights are already there, the lifespan agent knows what it's trying to achieve, and it's going to help you get there.
It's so cool. And I'm just thinking of the possibilities, like Sapien. What do I want to do? I talked to you when I first met you, and Linnea and I went on a walk for like 2 hours and talked about all this stuff. And I'm like, what can I build that would help? And theoretically, there could be a Sapien, coaches or program or something that helps you eat real food and align to our human nature. And that could be a intervention that we use and pay for. It's like, I think food is number one, right?
That is medicine.
Yes.
That should be medicine. Should be part of how we look at our healthcare system. And it's this weird thought within our current system. And it's not supported, and it's all out of pocket. And if it's out of pocket, people have this viewpoint that, well, I'm already essentially through my employer paying for my health care. So these things are all extra costs. Yeah. And that's another disincentive. That should be part of your default cost. Not even that. It should be promoted by the health system. And so that's, like we're just trying to spin everything around because it's prevention, not sickness.
Yeah. And you mentioned too, like somehow paying for real food or subsidized or I think this model, it's great that the Maha movement's happening and Bobby's in there with a new food pyramid and it's all about real food. That could even be part of this.
100%. That's going to support it. And I think lifespan will kind of naturally, and what I mean by naturally, the markets will create a force that is doing what Maha wants to do, which is, say, getting glyphosate out of or I'm not picking on that, but there are all of these additives. What was it? I think, was it RFK Jr. who said there are 10,000, or maybe it was Kelly Means who talked about there are 10,000 ingredients in the American food system and only
3,000
yeah, Europe? Like 5, it's
or less.
No, it's like 500 versus 10,000.
Oh, yeah. In Europe?
Yeah, in Europe, it's 500 and it's 10,000. There are a lot of these synthetic ingredients. So all of this stuff, you can go the regulatory route, but then that's always problematic because, people are going to come and lobby that. There are all of these details. And if you have instead just an incentive structure, those companies are going to find that out themselves and then incentivize the consumers to, choose the right things, and the market will sort itself out through that. And that's much more powerful because, science is changing constantly. Our technologies are changing constantly. Our food trends and, everything's changing. And this allows, with the incentive structure, it just figures it out. Mm-hmm. And, that's the theory of lifespan.
Oh, it's genius. I love it so much. That's why we're doing this podcast. So tell me what are the outcomes that we can look at? Like, what can we actually measure? Is it, for one, you could see how long people live. And also there's a difference between living in a hospital bed and thriving. So that's a little hard to measure, but I mean, it's actually maybe not that hard to measure if, people can walk, like, are they walking at 100 or are they in a bed at 100? Or there's also markers, longevity markers. So I don't want to have some new regulations on like markers because maybe my LDL is a little higher than someone else. And then now I'm penalized, right?
Exactly. And then, there's a lot we still don't know about biology, and people may have different modes that different metabolic modes that they're operating in. I mean, I'm speculating on that, but people may be fundamentally different in the kind of things that they need. We know people are allergic to some things that other people aren't. As a very simple example, they process sugar and alcohol in different ways. And so I would expect as a systems biologist to see lots of that kind of variation. And I don't want government just issuing an edict on the one way that we're supposed to measure things. Some people may have high cholesterol for a reason.
Well, some older people live longer with higher cholesterol, or most.
That's right. And so baking those things into regulation, I think, is incredibly dangerous. And instead, you have this function that says, well, how do we know that somebody's in a hospital bed or, they're able to walk? I would say, let the companies figure it out, because that's going to cost them more. And so they will be looking at all of those different metrics, including the much more near-term metrics. They may look at blood tests, but blood tests were also developed by the medical industry to detect illness. And there are new measures that are coming out where people are looking at proteins, which are much earlier signals of things going wrong. So we should just be open to the market innovating and understanding what all of those different signals are and what the new modalities are that are going to push people in the right direction. And that's also a Silicon Valley problem. They're the experts at nudging people towards actions. They're the world experts in it, not the medical system. So you talk to doctors and they'll say, oh, well, you can't get patients to do something
Yeah,
different.
yeah.
Well, I would say, well, the Oura Ring is getting people to stop drinking. And that's without a clear goal to do that. That just came about because people had the data. Now imagine that you have Silicon Valley product engineers poring over big data and thinking about the opportunities for nudging people into better and better health. Like, that's wild.
Well, they're experts in nudging people because that's what makes them money, right? So they're experts at making you use Instagram more because they're making
That's
more
right.
money. But this system puts that incentive in alignment. So now they're incentivized to use all their tricks and all their brain power to nudge people in the right direction.
That's right. And I just think about, like, imagine being a product manager in a lifespan agent company and, doing some big data analysis and then saying git push and then feeling like, hey, I just saved 1 million person lives with this one push of code to the cloud. That
Yeah.
how amazing would that feel?
I love that. Or years and lives. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can actually see, well, we made people live on average. Yeah. Like this
And
many years
that
longer.
will be the metric.
Yeah.
They will measure what matters, and that's what will matter for their bottom line.
That's so cool. So yeah, so it's not going to be baked in like certain things. Like right now, we just think total cholesterol or LDL is everything. So you're not saying these people will. We're not going to choose any of these. It will shake loose what is effective. What the cream rises to the top. I like the triglyceride to HDL ratio. Right. This is much more accurate, actually, telling someone if they're healthy or not than the LDL. And then that could actually be proven out. And then now we're like, oh wow, lower triglycerides, higher HDL. These people live longer. Let's optimize for that.
And the companies that do the right thing are going to make the money, and they are going to expand. So whoever is better at doing this stuff more efficiently and getting people to do the things, those are the companies that are going to win.
So we're running out of time here. We have about 5 minutes. So let's just wrap it up for people, just to make sure they understand it and the different entities, and just kind of maybe recap for people what we're talking about here and how someone can move along. And if they're not doing good in one agent, they can move to the agent, but that agent can still keep their shares of the time they were in that pool.
Yeah, they're basically earning shares with respect to each account. So the consumer has a financial balance that's like, it's a lifelong account. You can think of it as life insurance. It may have a payout. We're working through all of the ways that this model could work. And they also have data that's part of that account. And that's the consumer stuff. The consumer owns their data. And then they add to that, they basically hire a lifespan agent who makes money by keeping that balance high. And they do that by avoiding preventable disease. And there can be many different kinds of lifespan agents. And then there are all of the services, and that includes food and gym, maybe even relationship counseling, all kinds of techniques. If it works,
Stress.
It works.
Yeah, stress is a killer.
Yes. And so all of those things, if it works, it works. And that's all that the market will care about. And, over time, I would see lifespan also reaching right into regular sick care as well, because the more that lifespan will want to know about those costs and also be able to direct the right things when people are sick as well. And it would advise, don't do that surgery, do this other thing, and you're going to be better off in the long term. So
does Sickcare how does Sickcare fit into this? Would it slowly be replaced? Does it live alongside it?
I think that there are a lot of people in the sick care system, and doctors especially, who are looking for a better model where they can serve people better. And there are these DPC, these direct primary care providers where, and there's companies like Crowd Health, which is really amazing. I just saw Andy Schoonover, the CEO.
I'm about to talk to him about South by. Maybe we can do an event with Andy and you. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to be on a panel, actually. Okay. And so, what Crowd Health is doing is just amazing. Like, these are the kind of aligned health people who are there's a huge community here in Austin, which is amazing, who are trying to do the right thing inside this system. And so those kinds of companies are probably going to be early adopters of lifespan because it directly serves their customers and their business model and helps them shape costs in the right way without boiling the ocean on rebuilding everything. They can, find a lifespan agent and drive down the costs for their customer pool. And everybody inside the pool is going to like that.
Yeah. So, and then we're not saying that these services are totally obsolete. Like if I get in a car accident, we still have,
Oh, no,
right?
certainly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were asking about how does lifespan live alongside? Absolutely. This is not about saying you switch over only into lifespan and just use some digital health service. This is really coming into the market with all of these tools and technologies that are out there. People are using them. They're direct to consumer, and they're going to help you with preventive health. And of course, you need catastrophic care. That's going to continue. The exact model of how that gets connected together with traditional healthcare is kind of an open question. But I sort of gave one example of you have these high deductible plans where you take some of your spending and put it in an HSA. You also have plans like Crowd Health that would probably be good fits, or these DPCs, they would be good fits. And so those kinds of models are coming up, and there are ways of doing that. At UT Austin, the dean is talking about how to build, they're building a new hospital, and they're really thinking in a very, very forward-looking way that I was so surprised by, focusing on reducing sick care costs. And I thought, wow, that's amazing to hear.
Yeah.
The dean
Dean
of a med-
Claudia.
She's amazing.
I met with her a couple times. Yes. I want to continue to meet with her because I love that she's looking forward in the right way. We got to stop now, but yes, Crowd Health is great. Actually, I have a code, Sapien. Use code Sapien. It's what I use. I use Crowd Health. So that is kind of like if I get in a car accident, Crowd Health covers me. Otherwise, I don't really need the system. So yeah, big fan of Crowd Health and big fan of what you're doing. People can go on your website, say it again, and can they put in an email somewhere and stay
Yeah, yeah.
updated?
Oh, and I should say, people who are interested in getting involved, like innovators, entrepreneurs, health policy analysts, people from the government, there's a place on the website. Shoot us your email, and we'd love to have you involved. We're building a coalition, like kind of an industry consortium of people who want to think about this and help shape the policy on this and start the collaborations for how we can launch this model. And I think that we should be able to do it just with agreements between companies that are out there that want to shape the future of health. So yes, please come to lifespanproject.us. That's the website.
Absolutely. And I think we talked about this. It could be a conference. Like we should have.
We should do that.
Yes,
Let's
we
do
can
that.
do it. It's going to be in Austin, the health capital of the world. I'd love to help with that. So yeah, reach out to me, to Aneil, to the website. Thanks for doing this and great talk.
Yeah, thanks so much, Brian. You're a big part of this journey, so thank you so much.